I'm Nathan Bombries. I'm Commercial Director with Sales Sharks. Tonight is our second Sales Sharks 500 Club event of the season. The Sales Sharks 500 Club is about bringing together the business network around Sales Sharks. So bringing business people from the northwest of England together with Sales Sharks as a common theme. It's about enabling those business people to network. They've all automatically got rugby to talk about. They've got Sales Sharks to talk about. So the moment they walk in the room, they have something in common. And it's about for us as a club, it's about underpinning what we do. These business people, their contribution enables us to put the best possible team on the pitch. But we want to give something back to them. We want to make sure that they benefit from us for their businesses. So these events enable them to meet other business people, learn a little bit something about business with speakers like Enzo talking about leadership tonight, meeting Sales Sharks players as well, bringing their guests down to have a good time, building relationships that they can take away for their business. And this is one of 5 events we do, plus the 500 Club members all have season tickets and access to a suite on match days to entertain their guests. So it is a great opportunity for them, and it's great for the club as well.
Without further ado, I'd like to give you a very special Sales Sharks welcome to our guest speaker tonight, Enzo.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Cheers, mate. No worries, mate. Well, good evening. It's great to be here. Just to give you a little bit about my background. My name is Enzo Calamita. I've been running a training and consulting company for the last 3 years called Dunamis International. And our passion really is to develop leaders who in turn will develop their organisation. You're probably wondering why the PowerPoint slide begins with the principles of Mafia leadership. I'm going to be going into that in a moment, but just to explain that a lot of my ancestry and current family are involved in organised crime. And so I thought it'd be a great idea actually for money laundering for a training and consulting company. So if we can process that this evening, that's fantastic. But I have a tremendous passion about seeing the bar of leadership raised in all organisations. And I've had the privilege of working across all sectors. I started off in the voluntary sector, worked in the public sector, and also now in the private sector. And I believe that leadership is the greatest of the arts because it's the art of enablement. I think it's also important to understand that leadership is different from management. Many times we confuse the two. And leadership essentially is about direction. It's about the ultimate questions. It's about the what and why. Whereas management is about the how and when. And so this, in fact, is only the second time, actually, I've brought this presentation because I was very reluctant to give it because I usually like to leave the family stuff out of it. But the more I began to research my own history and observe what was going on, the more I realised there were principles there that, although having been used for evil, can be turned around and used for good. So we're going to get to that in a moment. But just thinking about the question, what is leadership? Stephen Covey, one of my favourite writers and development gurus, you could say, comes up with a definition. He says, leadership is the art of communicating to people their worth and potential so clearly that they come to see it in themselves. And it's all about, first of all, I think, what happens on the inside. One of the things I've learned, and I've had the opportunity of educating at university level, took a master's degree myself, and I'm not against academia, I'm not against being intellectual, being clever, not that I really consider myself an academic, to be sure. But one of the things I've learned is that you can teach what you know, but you can only reproduce what you are. See, people will hear what you say, but they will actually only copy what you do. And that's the value of leadership. You see, if you say you're a leader and no one's following you, you're just out for a walk. A lot of people ask me, well, what is leadership? And you know, in a nutshell, leadership is influence. Too many people think, well, if I've got the title, I've got the position, I've got the positional power, then people will follow me. Well, they might follow you while you're in the room, but when your back's turned, it won't be the case. People only follow us when they respect us and they believe that what we model in our lives, in our character, in our competence, in our ability, that has something to reproduce in others, that's something of value that we give to people. The other thing I think is important is that we need to have a fire on the inside. I'm a passionate believer. I mean, I'm Italian, I've got Italian genes, but it's nothing just to do with, that. But to have a fire on the inside of you, a passion for the vision of your organisation, that is contagious, that is infectious. And I love being around dynamic people who can really inspire and effectively rub off on other people. Now, whatever pursuits or projects, I appreciate tonight that you may be representing many different types of stakeholders and various types of industries. But you know, the reality is that the people around you are going to catch what you've got. And if you're not excited about what you're doing, don't expect your team to be. It's coming back to what I said before. You teach what you know, but you reproduce what you are. And I realize that integrity and authenticity is when the things that we do, the things that we carry on the inside, even without saying it, begin to reflect on the people that we lead. Many times I talk to leaders, they say, you know what, my people aren't doing this, they aren't doing that, they haven't got a passion, they haven't got an excitement. And the usual question I would ask the leader is, well, have you got one? Because the reality is, whatever you're carrying on the inside, in terms of your passion, in terms of your commitment, in terms of your integrity and your discipline, that's going to impact on the people that come under you. Use a phrase sometimes I say, if you want to check the temperature of an organization, just put a thermometer in the mouth of its leader. And that's why you see the match up there, because it says to engage the talent and passion of other people, you've got to be engaged yourself. And this doesn't just relate to business, it relates to any organization. The principles I'm talking about tonight are transferable. The characteristics that define great leadership are the same, whether you work in business, whether you work in a charity sector, social enterprise, non-profit, public sector, they're the same. When those principles, those key principles are embraced in your life and they're modeled, it's going to reflect on the people that you lead, and they're going to catch that flame from you. I want to talk a bit about what effective leaders do, and really this is simplicity on the far side of complexity. If we just move back one, Claire, that'd be great. What effective leaders do. 3 things. In fact, I'm going to add a 4th, but I want to identify these things. Great leaders have vision. That's what differentiates leadership from management, by the way. Because leadership asks the ultimate questions of where is it we're going and why is it we're going there. It's more of a philosophy, really. It's more abstract. It's not as definable. I don't know whether it'd be fair to say that management is a science. People debate that. But at the end of the day, as a leader, if you're not setting a direction and a sense of vision to where people are going, then that by definition isn't leadership. The next stage to that is management. Because you see, once you've asked the question, where are we going? Then you're going to ask the question, how do we get there? So leadership is about direction. Management is about speed, coordination, logistics, organization, project management, all those systems and processes that are basically involved in getting to the destination that have been articulated in the vision. To put management before leadership is, I think, synonymous to straightening deck chairs on the Titanic. Because you can have it all organized right, but if you chose the wrong ultimate goal, you can manage it well and actually manage well into failure. Does that make sense? You can manage something perfectly well, but if your strategy isn't sound, if your vision isn't sound, then you'll end up actually still in error, even with great management processes. And whole industries have been made obsolete, especially the speed of change that we're seeing in the global marketplace today. Whole industries have been made obsolete because the strategy and the vision was wrong, even though the management was right. Leaders have vision. Vision relates to the mind. It's what you see. It's that creation. It's that future vision of where you're going. Secondly, passion is about the heart. And I can't say how much this is important to effective leadership. People who get around you have got to feel a fire for what you're doing. See, at the end of the day, if you don't enjoy what you're doing and you don't get excited about it, how do you think the people around you are going to get excited and passionate about it? Maybe some of you tonight are involved in things for a while where you've just lost your edge, you've lost your passion, you're on the treadmill, you're kind of going through the motions, and what you need to do is put some practical applications around you to get your passion back. And thirdly, discipline. Because at the end of the day, you can have the greatest vision in the world, but if you don't execute it, it remains null and void. I usually, when I speak to business people and people who are articulating great strategies and visions, I say, what would you prefer? 1 or 2, here's your options. You can have a great vision and strategy with no execution, in other words, no follow through, no implementation, or you can have an average strategy with great implementation. Which would you choose? Naturally, you choose the latter. And that's one of my dangers, one of my weaknesses. I'm an innovator, I'm an ideas person. I have 100 ideas before breakfast. Yet at the end of the day, if those ideas can't be executed and followed through on, then you've only really hit one side of the coin. Leadership is the first side of the coin. Management is what makes it happen. So I'm not in any way discrediting the value of management, but leadership has to come first, and then management has to bring the process through to see it. Great leaders have vision, which relates to the mind, passion, fire, energy, edge, whatever you want to call it, that relates to the heart, and they have discipline. We could relate that to the body. They don't just say what they're going to do, they're going to do it. And this is one of the greatest challenge of organizations today, is that there is what we call an execution gap, a big gap between the things we say we want to accomplish and the things that we actually accomplish. How many would agree with that? Anyone here tonight who set goals for yourself, but you set New Year's resolutions, goals, strategies, objectives, and you're frustrated because they've not happened? There needs to be a system in place to see these things through. The results of great leadership are the 4 benefits you see there. It means that your organization will succeed in the short term and in the long term, what we call sustained superior performance. It will have engaged and intensely loyal customers. It will have a winning culture, and culture by definition is basically the way things are done around here, the way we act, the values that we espouse. So many people talk about values and mission statements. Unfortunately, many times they just remain like platitudes on a wall. The reality is your values become real when you reward the behaviors that align with those values. Does that make sense? Are you alive tonight? We had too much wine already. And finally, a distinctive contribution. See, you may disagree with me tonight, but I don't think the ultimate purpose of business is to make money. It's terrible, isn't it, what I've just said? That's just sacrilege, isn't it? The greatest organizations, the most profitable organizations, put their mission before money, and in doing so, they earn more money. Why do they do that? Because, you see, at the end of the day, customers aren't ultimately interested in you earning more money. They're interested in you providing more value. And if you fulfill on your value proposition, whatever that is, where you provide maximum value to your customers, and you fulfill your purpose and mission, and you live your values, the money will follow. Businesses that just exist and say, we want to make money, the research shows they're not sustainable. It's the value we provide to people, and the money follows. They put spirit before body. In other words, they put the mission and the values of the organization before the infrastructure. Anyway, you can argue with me about that later. And finally, they make a distinctive contribution, great leadership that has great people, that has great vision, and that executes on the vision. I don't know about you, but my greatest challenge in work today is finding the right people. You know, there's a phrase that says, you can get a turkey to climb a tree, but you're better off getting a squirrel to do it. It's putting the right people in the right place. And so, I've got quite a short time tonight, so I haven't got all the time to go into the basic principles, the key principles of leadership that I think define effectiveness and greatness. But I would say these are concepts that we need to be aware of. Bringing it home a little bit to my personal experience, just before we go to that, you see two leaders there. You're going to argue about whether these are great leaders. Both of those guys had all the characteristics that I just spoke about. Churchill and Hitler there, they were great visionaries. They had great passion and they had great discipline. I was debating with a guy one day. He said, you know, we need to be like the Nazis. He said, the Nazis were fantastic. All we need is discipline. I said, the Nazis had great discipline, didn't make what they did right. Both those leaders had vision, passion, and discipline. The missing ingredient that one had that the other didn't have was integrity and conscience. If you don't lead from a position, from a moral compass, from the right moral framework, from the right values, then ultimately anything you create won't be sustainable. And the history of civilization and great society bears that out. When we violate moral principles, when we violate integrity, what we create is not sustainable. But when we align ourselves with that, if I might call it, spiritual dimension, with the values that make a difference, with the laws that we know matter. Let me explain one of them. You can't have trust without trustworthiness. Does that make sense? You can't have trust without trustworthiness. If you violate that, there is no trust. And trust is the glue of relationships. And relationships are the key to success. Because it's people working together that produce the greatest results. Strategy is not the greatest competitive advantage. Neither is finance. It's teamwork. Synergistic teamwork, where people can come together and bring their talents and passions and energies and work together for a great purpose. Okay, bringing it home to my own personal experience, as I mentioned, many of my predecessors, ancestors, if you want to call them, were involved in organised crime. And one of the things I found, the more I observed their lives and what they did, is that although they violated integrity, they embraced principles of leadership that worked. And mentioned here, if you don't understand your history, you won't appreciate your destiny. You won't appreciate your future, because we're all the product of our backgrounds. Doesn't mean we can't reinvent ourselves, but we're all here today as a product of the influences that have come into our life. Let me introduce you to my great uncle. This is Antonio Spavone. Doesn't look like a mafioso, really, does he? Doesn't really fit the part. Born in 1926, died in 1993. This gentleman here was one of the major founders of the Neapolitan Mafia, very close with my own father. At the age of 15, his brother was murdered by a mafia boss in Naples. At the funeral, at the age of 15, he put his hand on his brother's coffin and said, made a vow and said, in 1 month, he'll be where you are. A month later, this particular mafia boss was having a party at one of the most famous restaurants in Naples. He went in with his ammunition. There was a big gunfight. And subsequent to that, the ammunition ran out. And he actually took the guy's heart out with a knife. So he had quite a bad ending. He then went on the run for a number of years and eventually was apprehended and was sentenced to 11 years in prison. Whilst in prison, he murdered 3 people and got an extra bonus, I think another 15 or 16, 17, 20 years. In the 1960s, while he was still in prison, there was a flood in the prison in Florence, and they let all the prisoners out of the cells. And as a result of that, many of the prisoners went to kill the director of the prison and his family, his wife and children. He had 2 daughters. And my uncle actually intervened and protected them. And as a bonus for that, the president of Italy, which was President Saragat at the time, gave him a Medal of Honor, believe it or not. So he was kind of a bit of a sinner saint character. And he got acquitted and went on to be a very, very powerful crime leader. This lovely gentleman here, look out, have you ever seen a guy so happy in chains? I mean, this guy's really happy. This guy attempted to have my uncle killed. In fact, my uncle was shot at face range with a shotgun, totally smashed, totally decimated his face. He had to go to Las Vegas and have 40 bouts of plastic surgery to get that rectified. They've actually written a book on Antonio Spavone. It was published in Italy in '79. He went under the nicknames El Guapo and in Italian Maloma, which means the bad man. One of the things I observed about the Mafia and some of my current family that are involved in it, similar to what characterises great organisations and what holds them together over time. You've got to remember, this is an organisation that's been going since the mid-19th century. And you won't find an organisation that sticks together without values. And it's a bit of a paradox, really, because you'd think, you know, how can criminals and thieves and evil people have values? But they do have values, and some of them are even moral values. And sometimes you see more values in organisations like that than you see in business organisations or social enterprises. Haven't got the time to go into them all tonight, but they have certain beliefs and standards that they hold to that glue them together and mean that they stick to their mission and they stick to their purpose. The second thing that I observe that the Mafia is very good at is strategy and entrepreneurship. One of the things that you'll find with many criminal organisation leaders is that they are great businessmen, they are great strategists. And many times alongside the criminal activities that they're involved in, they actually run legitimate businesses, as my uncle did. My uncle ran a number of legitimate businesses alongside the evil underpinnings that were going on in other areas. And doing some research on this, I actually found out that the word mafia actually means entrepreneur. And the word entrepreneur comes from the French, which means to enter and to take. An entrepreneur is someone who goes in and takes. In our contemporary sense today, an entrepreneur is someone who goes into that industry and takes the profits. Well, you only have to look at the Camorra in Naples, which my family are currently involved in, or the traditional Italian mafia in Sicily that moved over to America, to find that they literally diversified into every industry that they could. Whether it's chemical waste, whether it's food, whether it's garbage, whether it's the fish industry, whether it's financial services. It's called loan sharking for them, by the way. They diversified into everything, and they took everything. The Camorra in Naples, which I've had a lot of personal observation of seeing I'm not going to go into all the details of that tonight, but one thing I will say is they have become that powerful that they are like a parallel government. A number of years ago when I was in Naples, the Italian government moved all the military in because they were trying to counter what was going on there. But they're so entrenched in society, in the way that they go in and take and diversify, that no one can actually shut them down. And so there's principles here that are valid in terms of the way they have a vision to go in, to take, to diversify, and they don't limit themselves. Recent documentary just demonstrated that the Camorra in Naples turns over $1 trillion a year. It was powerful as a parallel government. $1 trillion a year. They've got an organisational chart. Looks a bit like my business, actually, that. We've got a few of them here tonight. They're structured. They're organised. They know what they're doing. They follow through on accountability. They follow through on responsibility. And this is one thing, if we could just go to the next slide, please, Claire. This is one thing they're very good at, execution. Pun intended. Whereas most businesses don't follow through, they know what it is to follow through. And they live by their values. When values are violated, it's punished. Punished permanently. Permanently, should we say, and terminated. Final slide here. This is my cousin, Carmine Caniello, major hitman in the Sarno family. He's just gone under witness protection now to avoid multiple life sentences for 18 murders. It's kind of weird when I talk. Again, I say this is only the second time I've given it, this presentation, but you know, I grew up with him. It's kind of, he was a lovely boy. Do you know what I mean? You wonder how people can get sucked into this life so rapidly. But responsible now for 18 killings, very feared man, but now going under witness protection and testifying against many of the bosses he served. I'm not talking about these things tonight to glorify what the Mafia does. One of the things I am saying is, if we in business and industry could implement some of the principles and mindsets that they have, in terms of their values, in terms of their strategy, in terms of their vision, in terms of the way they follow through on what they do, in terms of the way they go in and take and diversify, many of those things still remain legitimate, as it was true of Adolf Hitler and Churchill. They had similar characteristics. Why one fails is where there's a lack of adherence to concrete, sustainable values, adherence to integrity and conscience. I hope this has been interesting tonight. I hope it's provoked some thought for you. Usually I'd spend a lot longer on this, but I just wanted to give you kind of a snapshot, literally, and inspiring you really to go to the next level of your own leadership effectiveness and greatness. Have a passion, have vision, have integrity. It's what these people lack, integrity. Live according to your conscience. Many times it's easy to suppress that, but in the long run we lose when we violate our conscience. And follow through on your commitments, because that's a form of integrity. If people hear you say something, if your followers hear you say something and you do something else, they won't say anything, but they'll see that violation. Execute on your vision, execute on your strategy. Don't limit yourself. Get your energy and passion back, or if you haven't got it, get around people who have got it that can inspire you. To inspire means to breathe life into someone else, and I hope tonight, to some degree, I've been able to do that. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great evening. Thank you.